Welcome back, everybody. Doug Burson here, and today I want you to join me as I dive into the potential changes in our tax system after Trump's win and see if I can break down how it might affect your wallet. Stay with me. The recent victory during the election, both at the House, the Senate, and the presidency, has really caused shockwaves. And the truth is, it didn't matter which one won, half the country was going to be surprised. The truth is, a lot of people are really wanting to know, how is this going to impact my taxes? Where does this take us? And so I want to go through some of that today to at least give you some thoughts, some ideas on where I think things are going to go. There are some things that we can probably predict pretty accurately. And so today, I want to start with that. One of the things that we've heard a lot about, if you've been paying attention, is a TCJA, or the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, was set to expire the end of next year. And what that meant was a lot of big tax changes were going to occur in 26. Now that we've had this sweep, where do we think it's going to go? So let's take a look at those right now. Okay, for starters, I want to talk about what's going to change in 2026 the way we currently stand. The big one, the one that's the top of most people's list, is the tax brackets. So currently the tax brackets that we have are 10%, which will stay the same. The 12% would go to 15%, the 22% would go to 25%, the 24% to 28%, the 32 to 33, and the 35 to 35, and the 37 to 39. But that only tells part of the story. That really only tells part of the story. So, for example, if we're talking about a single person, currently that tax rates are going to shift. Once you get up to the fourth rate, currently that rate is 106. It's going to bump to 120. The 202 will bump to 250, and then the 257 actually bumps up to 544. So in other words, not only will the tax rate go up for each of these brackets, or at least most of them, the amount of money that gets taxed at that higher bracket will also increase. And that's across the board. So that's how we're currently set. So that's what's going on with those tax brackets, and you can see why that has so many people concerned. Sorry for looking at all that, but it's kind of technical, so I had to. But there's a lot of angst, if you will, of what's going to happen, because we have basically a year and 1 month of these favorable rates, and the way it currently sits, automatically in 26, those rates are going to go up. So what else was on that list as far as for most people? Okay, so that's the tax brackets, and when we get to the end of this, I'll tell you a little bit about where I think it's going to go. But let's move on through with another big one that's going to affect a lot of people, and that's the child tax credits. If you remember, it used to be $1,000 per child. Currently, we're at $2,000 per child, and we get that special one of $500. Because remember, when our kid turned 17, we no longer got the child tax credit. Now we're able to get that $500 for what they call those other dependents. So, for example, if your child continues on through college, we get an extra $500 per year for that. And then potentially, maybe if grandma is living with you and you're taking care of her, maybe we get $500 for that. Starting in 2026, that all goes away if nothing changes. So instead of $2,000, we drop back to $1,000. Well, if you've got 3 kids, that's a big difference on your tax return. And on top of that, the $500 is gone, period. That goes away. So that's a big deal that could potentially happen there. What about our personal exemptions? If you remember, a lot of you haven't itemized since 2018 when this law passed, because they basically doubled the standard deduction. You're going to drop from your standard deduction, which a lot of you have gotten used to, say $16,700, that will drop in half, basically, because it's going to get indexed. So I don't know exactly what the brackets are going to be off the top of my head. Let's see if I have them here. Yes, here it is. So currently, if you were married, you would get a standard deduction of $30,850. That will drop back to $16,700. And if you're single, you would get a standard deduction under the current law of $15,450. but if it expires, $8,350. So not only are the tax brackets bigger at a higher rate, but more of your money is going to be taxed. It's going to move into those brackets quicker. Now, there's another thing we've gotten used to on that same concept is the child tax credit. Under the old rules, at $110,000, you've started phasing out of the child tax credit. Now, under TCJA, that starts at about $200,000. So a lot of you have gotten the child tax credit for the last several years. If this thing goes the way it is currently set, you will lose that child tax credit completely. Now, another one that's a big one with the TCJA, which I keep saying, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that's the one that is set to sunset at the end of next year. So starting in 26, we're currently set to go back to these old rules. And that was the itemized deduction. So we just talked about the standard deductions, how it got doubled. And a lot of you haven't been itemizing, but a lot of you still have. But one of the things that they did in there is they capped the SALT tax, which is your state and local taxes. We used to could deduct all of those. Now they've capped it at $10,000. So that's your real estate taxes, that's your property taxes on your cars, that's your state taxes paid to the state, and if you live in an area that does the city, all those combined capped out at $10,000. Well, if you have a very large house or if you live in certain parts of the country, you had way more than $10,000 in that category and you did not get to deduct it at all. That's one of the things that happened in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Now, starting in 26, in theory, we will get that back if the TCJA is not extended. And one last one that a lot of people are really worried about is the estate tax. Now, currently, not many people are worried because it's around $14 million a piece, or I think it's $13.6. And so if you're married, that's $13.6 for you and $13.6 for your spouse. And as long as you do proper tax planning, if one of you dies, they can also get your $13.6. But starting in 2026, and this is what a lot of the buzz has been about, is that's going to drop back to the old rules. And with the old rules indexed for inflation, it's going to go from around 13.6 down to 7 million. For my client base, most of them don't have to worry about 28 million. But if you get down around 7 a piece, 7 million can start to cause an issue. So a lot of people are starting to make a lot of moves, trying to beat this sunset. Now, what do I think is going to happen? That's the important part. That's why we're here. My gut says because of the fact that we have a sweep, that there's probably going to be an extension on this. I expect the TCJA will get extended. What we don't know is maybe they extend parts of it. One thing that I could potentially see is allowing the SALT tax part to come back to where you could deduct that. Will they do that? I don't know. If they do for businesses, then that would mean we would probably no longer be doing the PTE tax. We're going to have to wait and see. But the one thing that really I would recommend is stay tuned. I'll keep you up to date on all this stuff. That's what I'm doing. I watch this stuff like crazy. But one of the things that I think we need to think about right now is we may have been given a gift and a golden opportunity. We have historically low tax rates right now. And we were trying to plan for a lot of people how to really work on getting more money into the Roth before the sunset occurs. If all the experts are correct and agree that we're going to have an extension on a lot of these, especially the tax brackets, will they get better? I don't know if they'll actually get better, but if we just even get an extension, that means we potentially have the next 6 years, 5 years, the next 5 years at least to try to make some smart money moves while we have these good tax brackets. So if you have a lot of money in an IRA, or if you've been dumping a lot of money into your 401k, this might be a really good time to start considering doing either Roth conversions or maybe switching from the pre-tax 401 to the Roth 401 and take advantage of these historically low rates. Because one of the myths a lot of people have is that I want to save the tax now because when I retire, I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket. The truth is, for a lot of you, that's not going to be the case, because between your 401k plan and your Social Security and some of your investments you've done, you may actually not be in a lower tax bracket, especially if you're in a single working household to where your spouse stayed at home and took care of the kids or whatever. That spouse will then get to draw on half of your Social Security. And quite often I'm seeing that people really aren't in a lower tax bracket. And that was a myth. And unfortunately, they didn't do enough research. So that's what I think. I think we've got some time here. Do I know for sure? No. Nobody really knows. Politics is a nasty game. And we will just have to try to play along with it. But for now, take advantage of these tax rates. I think that's the best thing I can say. Take advantage of the rates. Stay tuned. Whatever opportunities come up, I'll make sure to let you know. And make sure, if you're finding these things helpful, go ahead and subscribe. The more people that subscribe, the more impact I can have and the more people I can help. And that's what we're really trying to do here.